Selwyn.
Alderman Jp Smith.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk?
On an online meeting, but I think I've got a little bit of time still.
Okay, otherwise we can postpone.
No, should be okay.
Are you not going to be distracted?
No, it's not my item. I'll just need to keep one ear open for when my item comes.
Okay, so we can talk.
Yes, sir.
All right. This article they wrote, News 24, a biography emerged which stated that Smith, an honours degree in English from Stellenbosch University.
What about it?
Apparently, you never completed it, and now it appears that an investigation is being conducted into an audit of your CV and of other members.
Yeah. So the investigation with the party I called for, I self-submitted the material to the party's Federal Legal Commission so that they can investigate the matter, so that we can clear the air. The situation was that I finished a BA degree. I proceeded with my honours and then got involved in the elections in 94 and again 95. Had always intended to finish the honours, but you know how life is. Things get ahead of you and in the end you don't get to finish them.
Okay.
And you also stop looking at your CV. If you're not applying for new jobs, your CV pretty much sits as it is and you don't go back to it.
Yeah.
So the qualification sat there as incomplete, with brackets incomplete, and somewhere along the line, when we wrote the bio, the staff compiled a short bio out of the CV. That bio, the word incomplete at some point was left off. That was circulated for a while. That is what is now causing the problem. In that, to a couple of organizations where I was invited as a speaker or so, that was the bio that was sent. Also, the bio that was sent to the for the internal election process for our provincial congress, which is regrettable. Useful less that I'm learning out of this is don't bother listing and degree and put the word incomplete behind it. Just leave it off altogether and remove the opportunity for problems. But my city CV, the CV that is on the city website, is correct. It shows only the BA degree. The CV I submitted to the party for the selection panel, for the selection candidate selection process, correctly reflects only the BA degree.
All right.
So it's that bio that the staff edited that for a while was wrong, and it was subsequently updated at some point to reflect new positions and new roles, and the correct bio is now again being used, but for a while definitely it was incorrect.
So the staff member is going to be disciplined then?
No, I don't know that it is a malicious mistake. I mean, we deal with high volumes of requests every day for meetings. There are, on average, in my diary, 6 to 10, 12 meetings, sometimes more. And you speak to a community organization almost every night. These things happen in high volume, and it's not possible to check every piece of correspondence. You rely on everybody on the team to get it right, and mistakes will be made. There was no malice, there was no financial gain, no positions were applied for. Those were not things based on which I was invited to speak to something. You must appreciate that you get invited to speak and then somebody says, well, can you send a short little bio? And it basically says, this is what I like, this is what I do, these are the positions I hold, etc. The qualification is a minor thing on that. And there was no intentional desire to deceive, because the correct information is readily available on the city website and otherwise. So,
but you should have checked it as well, eh? You should have checked that the correct correspondence went through to them. But I understand. Thank you for your time, that you're allowing me out of your busy schedule now to talk to you about this. Appreciate it. I wrote a little short brief article on Facebook I want to read it to you, and I want to read some of the comments that the Facebook friends and followers reply to, if you have a moment. So I basically wrote here, JP Smith het altyd so slim gelyk, né? En so Hoor hoe lekker praat jy in Afrikaans. Ek wil vir jou gevra het, JP. Ja, maar hoekom het jy dan, ons praat nou hier, ek werk nou hier op 'n dak in Kallard. In elk geval, ja, maar dat sê hierso, a biography emerged which stated that Smith had an honors degree in English. Ek wil vir jou gevra, wat is verkeerd met Afrikaans? Anyways. Ja, nee, ons praat om. Ja. In elk geval, ja. Oké, dan, ek wil net vir van die comments lees wat hulle hier gesê het nou, né? Serene August, jy weet seker wie is Serene August, son August en June, sy vrou. Sy het gesê, hierso operative word gelyk, wat dit ook al beteken. Sanise Kibedu het gesê, Selwyn, I'm really looking forward to the video when you call this guy who has been busy trying to complete an honors degree since 1994. That's 27 years ago, minus 1 year of lockdown, obviously. All right.
Sê vir jou, maar miskien die verskil is, dat daar is collega's en daar is mense wat ek ken wat baie tyd afneem vir hulle self.
Ja.
Wat baie vrye tyd het en wat tyd vat om goed te doen wat vir hulle self belangrik is.
Ja.
Ek het nie kinders nie, ek het nie veel socialize nie, wat ek het is geweldig baie werk. Ek neem my werk baie ernstig op.
As jy 'n bachelor, JP,
eerder as sit en vroetel met my graad, het ek gewerk en ek het gewerk.
Het gewerk, ja. Nee, verstaan. So, as jy 'n bachelor dan? Is jy 'n bachelor?
Ek is getroud nie.
O, as jy getroud nie. Van Samantha Chitte het hier geskryf, I love JP Smith. Nou, sy is Kallard my nou sien, Kallard my nou kyk, sy's in Limpopo at the moment. En sy sê, I love JP Smith. JP Smith, hou jy van Kallard my nou kyk, Kallard vroumense? Are you into it?
Dit is 'n baie persoonlike vraag, Selwyn. That's getting very too much information-ish.
Okay.
But you can go and look at my ex-wife and figure it out yourself.
All right, I'll have a look there. Okay. Ja, Sammy Klaasen het hier gesê chi. En dan so julle klomp ander kommentaar wat ek dink nou hier is een kommentaar wat ek wil weer gevra het. Jonathan Kibedu, ek dink hy's by die Good Party. Hy het gesê himself en Addinall, now look at this. They say a leopard does not change its spots. So Angus did this to Patricia de Lille. I recall when he came into the DA, he went to the leaders like Suzette Little to ask, please remember my name, wanting them to make ways for him. I recall how JP used him and mentored him up until today. Angus once told me, I cannot support the Lille. Nou, ek het er 'n bietjie gaan research doen. Daar was 'n groot issue tussen jou en Patricia de Lille gewees op 'n stadium, né?
Wat sien ek was meeste van ons caucus. Ons caucus het gestem om te onthef van haar posisie. There was a motion of no confidence.
Okay.
And in that motion of no confidence, she survived by one vote.
Okay.
Three-quarters of the DA caucus voted to remove her because by that time the problems she was getting up to, the things she was doing, the issues with the foreshore freeway tender and the BYD buses, and all the other stuff, including the signage issues with the signage bylaw that has since come out on a forensic report and validates what we said. All that stuff was getting to the point where you either had to be corrupt and, close ranks, those things you hate about politicians when we all huddle together and lie to you, or you had to be brave enough to stick your neck out and fight. And in this case, that got me a huge amount of pain. But you should be glad because we didn't huddle together and close ranks and keep secrets. Some of us spoke out, and it came at huge personal cost at that time. And Jonathan, on one of his social media posts, makes the statement that Patricia was found, went through several court processes, and there was no findings against it. But as per usual with Jonathan, he's not honest.
Okay.
The point is Patricia had a couple of technical victories, initially around the postponement and the procedural matters, but ultimately she was required to face the music. Then she wanted the disciplinary procedures to be in public, which the party didn't permit, but eventually said, okay, we can do it in public. We were all happy for the facts to come out. And the night before, she stalled for 10 months, not facing the music, stalled with various technical processes, and the night before the disciplinary hearings were meant to start, she resigned to avoid them. So Jonathan, it's so 'n bietjie kosbaar met die waarheid daar.
Ek is seker Jonathan sal luister en maar seker vir jou respond. Ja, van ek lees hier is 'n one-page bio op Wikipedia waar dit praat daarvan die situasie met jou en Patrice de Lille en dan die Cape Town Stadium. Dis seker waarvan jy nog gepraat het, né?
Wel, ek dink ons het 'n spesifieke fight oor die Cape Town Stadium noodwendig gehad, maar daar was 'n fight oor 'n klomp ander goeders en ek het aanvanklik vir Patricia support, maar oor tyd as jy sien iemand doen iets, dan moet jy ook praat. Jonathan, hulle is lief van uitpraat. So ons het op 'n punt gekom, die meerderheid van ons caucus waar ons uitgepraat het. En ek dink die publiek moet bly wees dat ons bereid was om dit te doen en dat ons nie gesê het soos die ANC met Jacob, kom ons staan almal saam en weer af die een moesie van wantroue teen na die ander. Because that's how a rotten party is created. So we did the right thing. It was messy. These things never are easy. And the reputational harm was significant, but it's because the right thing was done, not the easy thing.
Your job is safety and security portfolio. Wat entail dit? Wat doen jy presies?
Okay, so technisch, I'm responsible for oversight over traffic, law enforcement, metro police, fire and emergency rescue services, disaster risk management, the 107 call center, the storm and events office, and some other smaller bits and bobs. And the job effectively means that I must monitor those departments and make sure they deliver. In practice, I try and be very hands-on. I do ride-alongs, I go out with the guys, and I try to make myself as knowledgeable in that field as I can so I can help the staff and be an asset to them. And we've driven a lot of innovation in Cape Town, much of which has been copied elsewhere in the country.
All right. It says here, the Cape Liquor Law 2013-2014 regulating trading hours and controversial dog by law from 2010 to 2012. You oversight on that. What is this dog by law that you guys implemented?
That's one of those things that keeps on biting you in the butt. That's what that is. So the dog bylaw, it's not a dog bylaw, it's an animal bylaw. So as I was the chairperson of the portfolio committee before I was the maker member, which is the job council Zwakking Avashe holds now. And during that time, I was required to write new bylaws. One of the bylaws that came onto the table was for us to consolidate all the old animal bylaws. I think we had about 13 old animal bylaws in the different parts of the city that used to make up Cape Town. You remember, it was all consolidated into the Unicity. Oh. And so we wrote a new one. We kept what we thought worked. We left out what didn't work. And then we got stuck on that thing about how you deal with dog barking. Because, dogs will bark. I've got two. It's in their nature. But it's also a huge source of complaint. And we tried this way and that way to define it, and however we did, it left some people unhappy. And I think probably the biggest controversial issue on that bylaw was that some of the animal welfare sector wanted us to force sterilization. They wanted compulsory sterilization. Okay. Everybody's dogs and cats must be sterilized unless you're a registered breeder. Yeah. And that at that stage was enormously controversial and caused a huge public fallout, and the city wasn't willing to push it to say that we think everybody's animals should be forced to be sterilized.
So jy wil nie gehê dat jou honde moet blaf nie?
Die honde, maybe actually I was on the side of the angels for this one, because the old bylaw actually was quite mean. The old bylaw said no animal shall by barking, yelping, whining or making any other sound cause a disturbance. So basis as jy gebel het en jy het gesê daai man se honde is 'n nuisance, dan is dit 'n nuisance volgens die bylaw. Wat ons gedoen het is ons het 'n objective maatstaf probeer insit. Wat sê as dit meer is dit is, dan is dit 'n nuisance. So that we can deal with the vexatious complainants. Daai mense wat kla vir plaas ondalwe. In elke woonbuurt. But in the end, it's very difficult to do and very difficult to police. So yeah, it's one of those things where I think a legal advisor at the time found that particular clause about the 6 minutes in a bylaw in Australia and put it in there. And then, as it is your job, you're representing the city, that would get passed on for it, and you must take the pain for it.
Talking about bylaws, ANC wants us to. You can't have self-defense as a reason to own a firearm, a gun license. What would you? I mean, in your experience, what reason should we use now to own a firearm?
Yeah, so when I think on this one, the ANC is profoundly misguided. Profoundly misguided. You know what they should first do is anybody who votes in favor of removing guns from people to protect themselves when the police are completely failing to do so and the rest of the criminal justice system is on its knees. Anybody who votes to remove guns from the public should then not be allowed to walk with a whole army of bodyguards protecting them as the National Minister does. That's not fair. If you think nobody should have guns, how about, give your own guys knop kiddies and they can protect you with their knop kiddies, if you think that's all we're entitled to. So if national government was doing its job perfectly and our crime rate was low and other things worked, I would say yes, but that is absolutely not the case. Our murder rate is extremely high in this country. We've got lots of problems. SAPS is losing budget over the next 3 years. Their budget is going to shrink by, I think, 11 billion. So more staff cuts coming. That, by the way, at the same time that they increased the VIP budget by 1.4 billion. So Becky did look after himself and his cabinet members. And this means a lot of pain for the average citizen. Now, the city and the province is putting money into the bucket. We've deployed this LEAP, which in the 10 worst crime areas is adding 100 staff. But I can't help if on the other side of the bucket, Becky is scooping out the budget on the national side with SAPS. And SAPS is very badly under-deployed. We've got about one SAPS officer for every 560 members of the public. We should have, by international standards, closer to one to every 220 members of the public. So we have almost a third of what we should have. Now, you see, if I was completely unqualified and uneducated, would I be able to remember any of that?
You probably write it down somewhere. Listen, you don't have you don't have a good relationship with Becky Cele, eh?
I do intermittently. He called me a few Saturdays ago and we spoke about the extortion task team, and he made some changes to his credit. I will give him that. And the extortion task team is starting to yield results. That is a terrible crisis that's facing us. And if we don't nip it in the bud now, it will eventually destroy our whole economy. We'll descend into a complete criminal economy. And but there are many other things that the Honourable Cele does that I have difficulty understanding or appreciating. And we wish that we could run the National Police Service provincially. We believe it should be a provincial competency and not a national competency. Your best police forces in the world are run by local or regional governments, not by your national government. So maybe that's something we can still change down the line and get a little bit more of a responsive police force and slightly better resource, because there are many good people in SAPS that are trying very hard, but that service is being run into the ground.
Who's to blame for that?
Well, we don't control SAPS. We control traffic law enforcement and the Metro Police, and our job is supposed to be traffic and bylaw enforcement, and that's very unsexy in most people's books. When I go to public meetings, whether it's in Hanover Park or Kraaifontein or anywhere else for that matter, or Boston and Belleville, the thing people want to talk about is not traffic and bylaw enforcement, sometimes a little, but mostly they want to talk about serious violent crime, which is destroying their lives and their livelihoods. And unfortunately, Minister Cele is in control of that National Police Service, he and the National Police Commissioner, Sitole, and that leaves us with desperately trying to plug the holes with the much smaller Metro Police. There's about 18,000 SAPS members and about 2,000 traffic law enforcement and Metro Police. And we also don't have the powers they have, so unfortunately we can't take over that function and replace what is being lost there, but we better do something soon. Because if we keep on at this rate, who is going to rescue South Africa? We desperately need a fully functional police service and a criminal justice system. The rest of the criminal justice system must also work.
Sometimes more is less, or less is more. David and Goliath, I don't know. You guys need to figure it out. You guys get paid very well in terms of implementing strategies. I wanted to ask you now.
Can I say that's why we try creative stuff like Police Reserve Service. That's why City of Cape Town has about 600 just short of 600 law enforcement reservists. So the only city in South Africa that has a thing like that. That's why we massively pushed to develop neighborhood watches. What we couldn't fix with budget, we tried with community mobilization. So we've pulled every lever we can to try and fix these problems where we can't fix it with budget and where we don't control SAPS. We're busy employing detectives, investigators to work with our staff in the LEAP areas so that we can do oversight over the cases they generate, firearms and drugs and high flyer arrests so that we can get better convictions. Want dit help jy arresteer die elk nie dieselfde pes oor en oor en die volgende dag is hy terug op die straat hier.
Why is he out again? Are you blaming the ANC for that?
No, well, and the ANC control the criminal justice system, but I don't want to constantly say I blame the ANC.
So you're saying...
I don't think anybody who is close to a CPF or a neighborhood watch, Selwyn, who knows what's going on, will tell you that they think the criminal justice system is working so.
Okay, so if I look at it from a layman's term perspective, you guys, the DA locks the criminal up and the ANC releases. Is that what you're saying?
Well, let's look at the case we had in Hanover Park. We had a situation where a guy shot at a Metro police officer. We arrested him. We took him to Hanover Park, to Philippi Police Station. And at Philippi SAPS, he was then thereafter released without being charged. It's now about, I don't know, a year and a half that we've been trying to get answers on that matter. And we just are not getting answers. It's infuriating because we know what happened. And the other big crisis here is just to go back to your topic, because you started this conversation on this line, is the firearms issue. We are just finding so many guns that have been handed into SAPS in the possession of gangsters. So at this stage, if you're trying to take guns away from good people, I can guarantee you where they're going to end up, and it's just going to make our lives all a lot more miserable.
Yeah.
So I really hope we can defeat this firearms amendment legislation.
I think the problem that you guys have is you don't have a police station, because you catch the criminal and take him to SAPS.
No, we're not allowed to have one. The law is very clear on that. When we make an arrest, we must immediately, in the shortest period possible, hand them over to SAPS.
Yeah, well, you must tackle the law then.
So the problem is that over time, because we've been very visible with the gang and drug task team and LEAP and everything else, people have just assumed we're like a second SAPS, but we're not. We don't have most of the powers, and we don't have police stations. We can't incarcerate, and we can't investigate things like subpoenaing bank and telephone records and stuff, and do the kind of criminal investigations that will put high flyers away. If we see you with drugs, we can arrest you with that drugs or that gun, but then we hand you over to SAPS. That's unfortunately how far our power stretches, and you can imagine how frustrating it is for us.
Some of the comments on Facebook, people say Bongi Bedikizela, he resigned because of this saga with his degree, and he's black, and the white DA members don't resign when they are being investigated.
Some do. It depends on the circumstances. Not every case is the same. I would suggest that at no point did I use a pretense of a qualification to apply for a post. So Bongi resigned because there was a direct link to Premier's post he applied for using that CV. My CV that's on record is correct. The post I applied for, namely to be a councillor again, that CV is spot on. It says exactly what I have, a BA degree. And my bio on the city website is also correct. So the fact that an error crept in somewhere is regrettable, and it has already been fixed. Yeah, but not without causing a fair amount of misery for me, I'm afraid.
Why do you think now? Okay, we know John Steele hasn't only got Patrick. Now suddenly, the DA is being attacked with imaginary degrees or being exposed. Is the election campaign, or what is going on?
What I can tell you is that politics has become a lot dirtier. Over the last 20 years that I've been involved in council, I have watched the kind of dignified leadership that the ANC used to have in council degenerate to the likes of Kallard in the city and Cameron Dugmore in the province. So they don't have the quality of leadership they used to have 20 years ago. And I've watched this whole thing get nastier and nastier, more and more vicious. Kallard will routinely sit in council and make ageist, sexist, homophobic and racist comments. That's the leader of a caucus. So this is sad where it's going, and the whole of politics working 12, 13, 14 hours a day, as I routinely do, and I work Saturdays and Sundays mostly. But what they spend their time on is digging holes, scheming, and trying to run smear campaigns, because it's pretty much the value they add. And maybe in the context of the septic tank, we can just call those the floaters.
I spoke to Cameron Dugmore, I think a month or two ago. He sounds like a stand-up guy. Like he knows what he's doing.
No, he's very capable of seeming reasonable and rational. But what he adds to politics is not. What he adds to politics is a whole lot of misinformation and misdirection routinely. And I watched him at Strandfontein, at the homeless shelter at Strandfontein, where in other municipalities where the DA was in the opposition, we worked with those municipalities to make those shelters work. He and his clique tried everything in their power to railroad and disrupt. In the middle of a COVID pandemic, that's not the mature thing to do. Then you roll up your sleeves and you help and you make work. You don't spend your time staging media gimmicks to disrupt and unsettle. And I'm afraid that's mostly what I see him doing. So I have to judge a man by his actions, not by how well-spoken he is when he interviews.
He's also white, and Kallard Niaus, I don't know, for me, those are the only white people I know in the ANC that's out in the public domain. Do you, as a white man, sometimes feel...
The end of apartheid is that we don't have to be the sum total of our race anymore.
Yes.
We can be more than we
Yes.
grew up to be, or more than we were born. And
Yes.
Cameron must be known not for his color, but for what he does. And,
For what it does, yes,
don't
I
think there's
agree.
value.
But the perception out there, it's plain and simple, and this is what it is. The DA mostly white, the ANC mostly black, and you get the EFF, and so you go on. Now, for you as a white man...
Do you ever come to watch council meetings? I will arrange you to come and sit in the gallery, and then you come and sit there in the gallery. And then you'll see, I think, are there any white councillors in the ANC? I don't think there's a single one. There's a handful of coloured councillors, and then it's mostly black.
That's just what I said now.
You'll see the DA is pretty much representative of the demographics. A huge chunk of the councillors are black, the majority are coloured, and a fair number are white. And our caucus really looks like the Rainbow Nation. But
No, but
definitely not
the
case of
leadership,
ANC caucus.
the leadership is white, isn't it?
Some of them.
No,
We
the
also
leadership-
have leaders like Dan Plato, who's our regional chairperson.
But he's...
who is definitely not white.
But they're going to replace Dan Plato now with, what's that guy's name? The young white guy.
Well, he's contesting. That's another thing of a democratic organization, is that you're entitled to contest, and we'll have to see what comes out of that process. I have my preferences, and I think they're known.
Which one are you
Internally,
backing?
I've lobbied for Dan. I believe in Dan.
Oh, right.
I think he's been a good mayor. I think he's brought stability. But Jordan Hill-Lewis is entitled to contest. That's in the nature of a democratic process.
What do you think, Dan? Do you think it did him justice the way he reacted the other day when he said to that guy in Outby to shut up?
It wasn't an Outby, it was in Ocean View.
Oh, sorry, in Ocean View, is
And
that
I
right
was
there?
there when it happened.
Okay.
I was there when it happened, and I mean, they just behaved themselves appallingly. Dan tried repeatedly to speak to them decently and calmly. He tried repeatedly to answer them, but they had their camera in his face. The one woman was on his shoulder and his back and in his face the whole time. The other guy walked so closely on him that repeatedly the VIP guys had to say, listen, just back off. I mean, you're right on top of the man, snarling and shouting stuff the whole time. And they carried on with that until Dan just couldn't handle it anymore, turned to him and rebuked him. And then they ran away. That was the end of their involvement in this community activity. They ran away and they stood around the corner doing interviews with each other.
Did you guys send Dan Plato for anger management classes?
Dan is a calm dude. Mr. Plato is a very calm dude. You have to provoke him ridiculously so. And I guarantee you he's calmer than you. As a guy who does not get angry. You have to push him very far to get that kind of reaction. And that's one of the things I love about Dan. His emotional maturity, he's calm, he's rustig, and he's always reasonable and willing to listen.
I want to ask you something very important, right? There's a guy I follow in Outby, Cloner. His name is Jeffrey Christ, almost like Jesus Christ. And he always goes live, and there's a couple of videos where your guys came in, city police, and they wanted to destroy the Rastafari's gardens and break down backyarders. There's tear gas and all these things happening, and we saw this. Every time you guys go in there, we see this. I mean, is it even human in the cold at night to break down those houses? Those property. I mean, if you look at history, are you, the city, the DA, doing enough to protect those people, to help those people into proper housing systems?
So I was with the mayor and some of the other councillors up in the top of Hangberg the other day,
And right.
looking at the housing and the new housing that is being built. There's some housing on the side of Hangberg that's been built. Remember, housing is a national competency. We get the money from national, we build with what they give us. They cut 660 million rand of our budget this year. So things do slow down when they turn off the budget tap. But Hangberg has seen some housing built, and there's a whole slew of more. But unfortunately, that slew of more housing is being hamstrung because the Peace and Mediation Forum is the official body representing Hangberg in terms of a court order. And in terms of that court order, there are certain things the city has to do and certain things the community has to do. Yeah. Unfortunately, the community obligations have been violated through no lack of effort of the Hangberg Peace and Mediation Forum. Have tried very hard, but there are elements in Hangberg who don't care and who will intimidate others. So when you see us going in there, doing an anti-land invasion operation and breaking down structures that have just been built, they were building on those structures in that morning, it's because I'm sitting with video footage from a resident standing there saying to me, please do something about this. They're building on our open space. We don't want this. We don't want these persons building here. This is the community space. By law, we are also obligated to go and remove structures, and you will not believe across the city how many complaints about land invasion we get and how many structures we have to remove, which has become a lot more difficult with COVID because national governments made regulations like the Disaster Management Act, Lockdown Regs Regulation 70, that says we are not allowed to remove structures, and that's superbly frustrating.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that came out when we spoke to Angus McKenzie, when we had the split braai, is precisely about that, where the guys felt that when colored people put up structures, you guys are easy to come and just take it off, but when the black people that's immigrating from the Eastern Cape comes and puts up, it's not being done.
You're going to get vilified galore for that word. I'll take you back to Helen Ziller. You're not allowed to say immigrating.
Immigrating is immigrating.
You can wrestle with the political correctness. I'll just tell you that in a normal year, like most cities in South Africa, we remove about 10 to 15,000 structures. This year during COVID, it has been a lot worse. It's closer to 60,000 because people gamed the system. They realized that the lockdown and the SAHRC court interdict, courtesy of Chris Nissen, was making it easy to invade. That's how we lost the entire drift hunts, for instance, nature reserve, which is really tragic. And I don't know by race group because we don't keep stats in that way.
No, we see it in the community. Remember, I live in the community.
Were removed, but I'm almost certain if you go look at the stats, you'll see it is the opposite of what your narrative was suggesting earlier.
I'll look at. You see, these stats, I promise you, it's not easily available. You have to search and search, but irrespective of. You mentioned.
I can try and get you the suburbs where it happened, and then you can.
Yeah, but what I'm saying now is, I'm talking to you now. You can provide me. Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying. Alan Ziller, you spoke about Alan Ziller, and we're looking at whatever's happening now. Just before the elections, you've got Good Party, you've got the PA, you've got Gatful Cape Townian that became the CCC, and all these parties now, and if you look at social media, I know it's not a proper dipstick, but there's a lot of excitement around all the new parties that's rising up. Are you guys worried? And do you, I suppose what I want to ask you is, Alan Ziller, do you think she's still relevant within the DA as a leader?
Well, she occupies a purely internal position now. She doesn't occupy outward-facing position as Alan Windy and Dan Plato do. She's an internal regulator of internal processes as a federal chair. So that's a purely internal function. But I will tell you that when we were out in Langa yesterday, she got an extraordinary reception. So her enemies may have opinions, but I suggest they come and look at the kind of reception she gets in a place like And
I promise you.
It is true. Politics changes all the time. New
It's
parties
not.
come.
I think it's all about glamour and excitement, and it's about people saw someone they saw on TV. Zuma came to was it Courtney Peters when they murdered her in Elsie's River, and the people went crazy. Cyril Ramaphosa came to the 39th Avenue, Dark City. He came there and he spoke there. I was there. People went mad when he pulled up, but when he leaves, they, it is what it is. It's just about the excitement of seeing someone.
The point with you. That's definitely fanfare around an event does not translate into votes. That I have seen. I've been in this now. I've been in politics for 31 years.
Yeah.
I know very well that's not the case. So yes, there's new political parties and new things happening, and some of them will get a bit of vote, but there's also massive changes within the ANC's ranks. Their vote is collapsing all over the city. We saw that in Delft when they went from 40 to 16%. We saw it in Ward 115 where they went from over 20 to 1.7, and we are scooping up a chunk of that vote, so is the EFF. So in the end, I'm willing to bet that the DA is going to be okay, but we have to pull up our socks after COVID. COVID has caused our service levels to drop in the city a lot. We are desperately fighting to push them back up and getting them to be like they should be.
The narrative in the colored communities and on social media, and I keep on saying, you guys might not see it as a dipstick, but what we read in the comments, the narrative is the people are not happy with the Democratic Alliance. They feel the Democratic Alliance is a racist party, is not looking after the colored people. And I don't see anything you guys are doing to change that around.
I think that it's because the people who comment on social media are very often the commentators. They're not the silent majority. When I deal with this in communities all the time, when a group of so-called leaders tell you X, and you then go on to speak to people door to door or in a different forum and they tell you why.
Yeah.
So you have to separate those who ventilate opinions in the media versus the general people in a community. I will say you can have opinions about a lot of stuff, but at some point you must measure it. So if you look at job creation, city creates more EPWP jobs than any other city. Unemployment rates are the lowest. Access to basic services across the city is the highest. The provisioning of quality clinics as measured by gold and platinum standard is the best. There's whole slews of indicators, including the Gini coefficient indicator, that shows that as a city, we run the city better than other places, and that includes clean audits and everything else. So you can have an opinion, it's fair. Everybody gets to have one, but you must also root it in some kind of factual basis. And yes, COVID has hurt. Service levels have slipped because depots were closed. Remember, we had 3,000 people who tested positive of our staff and 54 deaths. That COVID has hit us hard. And we are busy clawing our way back to the service levels like they should be. And for instance, on the cleaning front, you're going to see some significant improvements over the next couple of months.
We'll have to wait and see. The elections is around the corner. Exciting times. Thanks for your time. When are you going to complete your degree?
I enjoy your videos tremendously, even when I'm the butt of the joke. So I'll eagerly await your next installment.
Yeah, before you go, I just want to read you some of the other comments. Donovan Nell says, "You must know what they say. Looks can be deceiving." And the other one says, "Craig Anthony Conman know how to look clever." Van al die blond oog hare sê Oscar Bogart.
Willing to say that I sound at least half as clever as Cameron.
Riyad Abrams says it's a white lie. I think that one was funny. And Bianca Boyson said, "Shame, a yellow miscall." I don't know if you get that one, but yeah. Anyways, thanks for your time. When are you finishing your degree?
I don't know if it still means all that much to me. It did a lot when I did it, and then the longer you're at work, the less you care about degrees. You know what they say, hire for talent, train for skills. And if it's one thing I can tell you, that whenever I've been involved in a process where I've gotten to make decisions, like when I was the provincial director of the DP, I didn't hire people with qualifications. I hired people with talent and passion, because you can train the skills later. So I'm not a big fan of qualifications. I did my degree, and I quite frankly halfway through the honours just couldn't see the relevance of it when we had the opportunity opportunity to contest the 1994 elections.
John Steenhuisen, when he looks at you and he realizes that you are more educated than him, do you think he envies?
John is much smarter and more clever with the mouth than me, and so I'm never a threat to him. And in any case, can I say, I don't think that that degrees maketh the man. I think
I mean,
there is a lot in your character and your demeanor, how your parents raise you, what values you have. I have known people with multiple degrees who have not been able to cut anything, and I've watched people with almost no qualification, barely into high school, who have
Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma became president.
Nothing about a person.
Jacob Zuma became president, and I think he finished Senate 3 or Senate 5. I can't remember, but yeah. So that proves the point, yeah. But it's just you know, the DA guys, everyone got a degree, but we don't need a degree. Zuma became president. I don't know.
I don't think that most of the DA people have degrees. Our councillors and our MPs come from all over. I used to work a lot with a guy called Joe Marks. He definitely didn't have a degree. Joe was from Retreat, from Borderline. I used to work with him a lot. I used to drive with him in a beaten-up old car all over this province to go and launch new branches and stuff, and used to listen to Joe a lot. He had a phenomenal emotional intelligence and understanding of people, which I will never acquire. He didn't have academic qualifications, but he knew more about people and working with people than almost anybody I've ever met since.
Yeah, Joe Marks got the best marks in interpersonal skills. Thank you for your time, JP Smith. It was nice chatting to you.
Selwyn. Go well, sir.
Cheers, bye.